your body is in this weird state, like, hey, things are happening. So, stay sharp, stay alert. It's 1 a.m., but still things are happening, so we cannot sleep now.
In part 1 of my chat with Elementbound, the creator of Netfox and Noray, we touched on his journey through multiplayer game development, what pushed him to make Netfox, and how multiplayer consists of parallel universes and timelines. But you'll want to stick around for his thoughts on the C# Holy War.
How did you get into game development?
I started with GameMaker. That was like almost 20 years ago.
Wow.
So ever since GameMaker went from GameMaker to GameMaker Studio, and I think that's the current iteration, but even Studio had like 2 major releases. And actually I ended up going pretty far with, because for example, it doesn't really have extensive 3D support. So I ended up writing a 3D renderer with its own simple mesh format and a bunch of shaders and stuff. So this was quite exciting, but at some point, I guess I wanted to try out other engines. That's how I started with Unity. At first, it was interesting because there's just so much stuff in there. So you get a bunch of pre-made functionalities. For me, it felt kind of bloated, I would say. Slow to react, slow to compile, slow to run, even just minutes to open my project. So that was one of the reasons. And the other more important one, I think around 2017, I had this idea for a multiplayer game. It would have been an interesting hybrid of couch co-op and online, so that way all of you can play together but still have that, sitting down together feel. And that's when I started getting into multiplayer. Unity had an interesting mix of approaches, so to say, because by the time I started messing with this, their older solution, I think UNet it was called, by the time it was absolutely deprecated and unavailable. But they also didn't have an official full-featured solution out. They had Unity netcode for game objects, but that was still in beta, but that didn't matter. I started using that. And then I decided to pivot to try mirror networking, then fish networking. And in the end, I think fish networking was the best for me because it already had some techniques implemented for latency compensation out of the box. And for some reason, GameMaker, especially after Opera, bought them. So these are the 2 engines that I'm aware of. At this point, I have spent a few years and multiple iterations on working towards this one game. At one point, I even abandoned multiplayer because it seemed too difficult. I figured I will try this game a 4th time, but this time, instead of starting prototyping the game mechanics and then trying to shove multiplayer into the whole thing, which absolutely a horrible idea, by the way. Yeah, I think I started basically implementing the core mechanics in multiplayer that I was sure I would need. And it went kind of to completion. Then the issue was connectivity. I can't just invite a friend. Internet service providers don't really like for you to just host whatever and open your device up to the public internet and run your own, gaming service of your garage.
Right.
Usually frowned upon. So that's where you need techniques like NAT punch through or UPnP or whatever else. Or the other solution for big studios is to just, have your farm of dedicated servers out in the public and people can connect to that, which I unfortunately don't yet, but I accept donations towards that.
Yeah, take note, everybody.
So yeah, I wanted a solution that people can host on their own PCs, but connectivity also works. That's where I started Netty. I worked on it for a while, but realized that it's absolutely horribly overscoped. Like it didn't only do connectivity, it would manage user profiles, it would manage lobbies, chat, kind of like Blizzard's Battle.net, but smaller and open source. It even goes further because before I wrote that, I wrote my own communications protocol that is transport layer agnostic, get it up on NPM and GitHub pages and so on. And then I started Netty, and then I realized and damn, I have all these features and I still can't connect 2 people over the internet, so it's kind of not good at this point. And that's when Noray started. I made a fork from Netty, threw out most of the kind of unnecessary stuff, so it was a huge descoping. Noray is as simple as I could make it. It literally just connects 2 people. It has 2 methods to do that, to foolproof, and that's it. This time, I think it's 2022 probably. I already have my kind of game template with some basic mechanics, and I can even connect to people. But it does not work suddenly because Noray also orchestrates a handshake between two peers, and for that you need to be able to send data to somebody without connecting to them over UDP. I think this was with fish networking. I even tried using reflection to access the insights of the classes without anyone's permission. Did not look really doable. I also found it, or I also ended up writing my own networking library in Unity as well.
Yeah, what was that called?
Netwind. That almost got some traction, but I did not really go far with it because after that I just switched to fish networking. But I think it's interesting to see that there were already some elements of this huge foreshadowing that I'm doing.
Where do you throw your hands up and make the switch to Godot, right? Because you're not doing anything there yet because it's still early, right? That's still, early in their building process, especially their multiplayer stuff. So like, how do you make that switch?
The moment was when I realized that I can't access this arbitrary data sending functionality because that was pretty much a hard limit. It was an absolute requirement for things to work. That's where I figured that this is going nowhere. And yeah, I think that's when I switched to Godot properly. Ended up being quite prophetic for me. That was like a few months before the whole runtime fee debacle.
Right. So, yeah, I was there for that. Yeah.
I mean, it's still kind of sad because I view learning engines as kind of a technology investment. Actually, I was blown away for like weeks, even after starting with Godot. It was so refreshing. The download size is absolutely minuscule compared to Unity or, God forbid, Unreal. And there's just so many, quality of life things about Godot. One of them being is the textures. Like, as far as I remember, in Unity, you would have to have a picture or something. In Godot, I can just let's say I want to have a gradient there, and then I can just configure it from the editor. It's kind of a small thing, but it's really huge. Even the animation system of Godot, it's really useful both for prototyping and for connecting behavior to already existing animations.
What are your like big favorite things about like making that switch? Like what's something that really stands out other than those animations that you were talking about?
How quick the whole thing is to download and start up. I have a project with huge meshes, textures, assets and such, and it's still not under a minute. Coming from Unity, this sounds ridiculous, and especially GDScript that you mentioned.
Let's involve C# now, because I know there's going to be a big push for that. I like GDScript, and it seems to be the seamless way into the engine, and now there's going to be the C# layer. How do you feel about that?
You have to consider your audience. There's already people who are, let's say, not really seasoned programmers or are not interested in learning other languages. I think if Godot can pull off interoperability between the languages, that would be the best. Let's say you write a class in GDScript and then you can use it in C#, which you can already do, but you need to write these weird wrappers because you can't access the class properly. You just get some generic node and then you ask for a method by name, then you get the callable, then you call the callables. It is technically there, but still. I think for people who are in any degree interested in programming or are doing it a bit more, let's say for making games or whatever reason, I think it's really good idea to not really stick to a single language. It's really nice to just sometimes try out other languages because they can give you pretty good ideas.
I think that's excellent advice. I think that if you like lock yourself into a language, maybe the next time you run into a challenge or some problem that's, outside of your scope, you may not have the tools that you want to have to solve that. And not that you can't, it's but maybe that's what gets you to the next step, right? You get a new job or you pick something up. So you had this project that you're like 4 years into. You've written some libraries to make it work. It's still not working. You switch to Godot and you're trying to build something, right? You're trying to build this multiplayer game still in Godot. What was going through your head when you were like, I need to make my own lag compensation library?
I had a brief exploration phase. Like, I have Godot now. I have this Noray that can connect people. So all I have to do is the game finally after years. So let's see what Godot can do. And it has its RPCs and multiplayer synchronizer and such, but this just misses so much. Like, yeah, sure, technically you can build your game, but it's gonna probably fall apart under any kind of latency. Which, again, is why I'm so weirded out about most engines not having this out of the box. Obviously, Godot doesn't have to implement it now. Netfox is nice. Go use Netfox. I'm kind of prone to rolling my own solution to things.
Right.
It's the, not made here syndrome, pretty much.
Right.
And it's cool because I wrote a bunch of things that are interesting, but it's also not really cool because
your game isn't done. Where's your game, man? Come on, it's been like how many years?
I felt like it would be interesting and worth it to go with an approach that tries to be as Godot-like as possible, or at least to some degree. I think it was the summer of 2023, and I was sick at home, and I figured I have all this free time now. So time to do this thing, and that's when I started building Netfox, because there are solutions, but the problems with the solutions were that I did not build them.
That's insane, though. I mean, we are fortunate enough to have people like you who want to do this stuff, because otherwise we're all just like waiting around for the person to do it. And I was looking into this before I found Netfox, like I said a minute ago, and I was reading the Gambetta paper on the and the holy grail that where everybody starts, and then you realize that that's just scratching the surface. And so you start writing this, and then like how long did it take you to get something where you were like, oh, this is working? Like, what was that process like?
So I kind of had a bit of a head start with experience from NetWind, and that also meant that I kind of had an idea of what features do I have to mirror from other networking solutions. And I think pretty much the first thing was the network tick loop, because you have to have a unified sense of when are things happening, not just the fact that they are, especially with rollback. Have no illusions, it was not easy at all. It was me banging my head against the wall for a week straight. So this kind of week was about the timing and the rollback part. So at that point I just had two little Tic Tacs running around with latency compensation, which is pretty cool already. And I think I started building stuff from there. The next one was probably the interpolation. That's usually the order of problems you tackle. Like, let's tick at the same rate at the same time, preferably. Cool. Now we have an idea of time. Now we can actually roll it back. So time to write rollback, and then you go, all right, this is cool, but it's choppy as fuck. So we kind of need to smooth things out, so that's where you do interpolation. Actually, the other huge chunk of work started from there, because at that point I just had a tiny demo, but I wanted to make it something that people can actually reuse or use in their projects, and have it open source and downloadable. And
that was like your goal from the beginning. You actually intended to release this and have everybody use it, right?
Yeah, I saw that other people are wondering too if there's anything they can use. So I figured I would share it with other people, so other people don't have to go through the same headbanging week like I did. And the other thing is that I already wrote Nylon, the communication protocol I mentioned. And I think that was a really nice experience, because that's the first time I wanted to kind of effort max an open source library. So Nylon also has example programs, example code, a full site with documentation, a reference manual, and etc. So I kind of brought all of that over to Netfox eventually. There are people who have built their own solution for some hard problems, networking or else, and they even shared it. And despite the solution being great in its own right, the whole thing kind of just falls off, as you mentioned. And I think it's because there's still this barrier of using it. Like, cool, I have this problem, here's this solution, it performs well. I have no fucking idea how to use this now. So
right.
From it.
Right.
So I think it's important to let's say effort max your initiatives if you want want to get further with them, because I think one of the great advantages that Netfox ended up having is that it has actual documentation, and at this time it even has multiple example projects for various features, and it even has a whole as game, so you can just look at it and figure stuff out. And I think there's other add-ons that miss this.
When I go and look at a new technology, there's this like intuition that you have that you kind of like internally hit these check boxes, and then at the end of your survey, if it hit like 4 out of 5 of those or whatever, you know that, at least for me, I know that I should put effort into that. And I think that's exactly what happened to Netfox. Like I was like, okay, here's this tool. Here we go. Let's see what this guy has. Okay, he has some oh, he's got documentation and it seems pretty good. You know what? Okay, I'm gonna give this guy a try. And then you just dive in, right? And that's how it goes for me. I don't know. Is that like you get this intuition, right?
Yeah. If I look at your tool and I cannot figure out how to use it, then I just can't use it, unfortunately, as simple or dumb as it sounds. Whenever you make something, if you want to share it with people, then you kind of make it for an audience. Does it have some examples or documentation, or even how do I use it? And then if you build all those things for your audience, then your audience can actually connect with your thing and can end up using it. This kind of perspective shift is incredibly important, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's like you need a marketing department for, everything to work out correctly. And because you might have the best idea in the world, but if nobody knows about it, or if you're targeting the wrong audience, right, that's presentation and PR and marketing right there. And unfortunately, I wish everybody could just know about these things. You know what I mean? I think things are pretty easily discernible at this point. Like you said, you'll look at the commit history. I mean, that's like checkbox number 3 on my list of things is when's the last time they commit. I think there's a lot of confusion about authority, right? And it's like every third question that comes up in Discord or maybe on YouTube is fundamentally an authority problem. I try to look at authority as like, who can make the changes? How do you look at authority in something like, when you're approaching Netfox, is it kind of implied because you like set the fundamentals and everything like stems off of that? Like how do you talk to that?
If you would indulge me for yet another rant on the topic.
Let's do it.
Multiplayer is in some ways such a unique thing to develop, because let's say as a player, it's kind of magic. You press a button in one device and then stuff happens on all the devices, and somehow it's all in sync. So all the same things happen, and all of these things happen at the same time, and the consequences are the same. And now you are, driving around tiny cars, bumping into a big ass football, and we are playing Rocket League, and it just works.
Yeah.
And if you kind of pierce the veil, it starts breaking down into the weirdest insights you can have at all. At first you realize, all right, it's not actually in sync. So it is not like a single shared space. It's like multiple spaces that kind of look the same. So we basically have parallel universes on every single computer or device that's joining. And actually things don't really happen at the same time. They just kind of make it look like they happen at the same time. So now you have all your parallel universes and time travel, and then you also have your parallel timelines even. Now you start talking about authority and you just feel like leaving, because fuck this shit, this is ridiculous. It makes no fucking sense at all. So yeah, now you have to kind of discern which part of which parallel reality is owned by which tiny god in your tower rack or something. I think all of these concepts are simple or can be boiled down to simple conclusions, but it's a really complex road to get there. Taking the authority, for example, it's pretty much, for me at least, it was who has ownership of the given thing's state. So you see the same state ideally on every device, but as you mentioned, only a single device has the right to make the change. Usually, at least with Netfox, the whole idea is being server authoritative, or where, the server controls everything. So in this case, you don't really think about what is owned by who. You just go, yeah, this is the state, it's owned by the host, and the input is owned by the player. And that's not necessarily the case. That's not the only way to approach it. And I try to not hard code it that to Netfox either. But technically, you could have, let's say, you could connect 3 servers and 10 players, and you could distribute the objects between the servers as well. So this way you can kind of load balance simulation or whatever. So authority on one hand is simple, but you can get really complex with it as well.
I mean, I struggle with it every time I sit down to write some new feature or implement it in the game. It's just like I always end up with something that trips me up, and I think that's half the reason why I make demo projects, is so that I don't have to remember how to do that every time. And if you're not just spinning off projects and just implementing one feature to figure it out, and just just storing that repository, like I don't know what you're doing, because that to me is like fundamental. Like, how did I do that? And I'll go look back at something I did like 2 years ago so I don't have to rewrite that code.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some people even make toolkits out of these, and I think it's also really nice that Netfox has feature examples too. So, basically the same thing. You can just go look it up. I also tend to resort to that occasionally.
What do you think were some of the more challenging things, or maybe something that's still biting you that, you're just not able to really get where you want it to go? You know what I mean?
Getting the whole rollback logic down was definitely one of the hardest parts. But then for a long while, Netfox was semi-done because I built it for a game I wanted to make. And actually, it pretty much supported that game very well. Timing was also kind of difficult, just in the sense that my assumption was that all of the clocks on the devices are kind of precise. Like, if you want to run something every, let's say, 30 milliseconds, then on every device it will happen every 30 milliseconds. And then during testing, I noticed that the timers just drift apart mysteriously. So at first I just made a quick workaround to just reset the clock if it's too far away, and that actually led, I think, to one of my favorite features, the second iteration of the time synchronization. It was not difficult in the sense that it's not a novel problem. We have been synchronizing time pretty much since, 30, 40, 50 years on with computers. So it's a solved problem, but it was really interesting because I ended up researching the network time protocol version 4 very much in depth to see how it works. I actually read the RFC for it, which is a very rare thing for me to do. I did a presentation on it even, and that's when I sat down to implement the whole thing for Netfox, and it was quite fun. I think it's one of my favorite features that I have implemented. There's still a mountain ahead, unfortunately. One thing that I have been kind of working on / struggling with is current state. Netfox works well with kind of continuous actions, but once you have events that trigger interactions, it gets a bit more difficult to handle them with Netfox's current version. So part of that is why the mutations API has came into the picture. And this is also the direction I want to take Netfox in, to support these things, because the way I think about synchronizing games with multiplayer is basically that you have 3 major components. One of them is the state, like what are your objects and where are they, what's your player's HP, what's the velocity, and so on. Then there is inputs, the things you want to do, and Netfox currently operates with these 2, or used to operate with these 2 only. So you are here, you press right, now you are here. And basically each new state is a function of the previous state and the player input. Excellent, marvelous. What happens if something is not driven by player input? Well, that kind of sucks now. So this third component I call events is what I want to support better, and I think this will open the door to many more exciting features. Technically, you can already do whatever you want with Netfox. Worst case, you have to implement the mechanic from the ground up. But Netfox doesn't prevent you from doing that, which is cool because you can do stuff, but it's not ideal. So that's why I want to expand Netfox in this regard.
So what's an in-game example of the events, like a weapon fire or something, or like a timed thing where you have multiple people like clicking on something at the same time and then like see that little bar and then boom, it explodes or something? Like what's some gameplay things that would relate to that events issue?
I think firing is the best example, which may sound kind of contrarian because in Forest Brawl, the example game, you can already just throw bombs, which is basically weapon firing. But the thing is that it's outside of the tick loop, the rollback loop. So it is still subject to latency. So if you have really bad connection, you click the mouse button, wait a bit, and then the bomb appears. So that's not ideal. So yeah, weapon firing is one good example for events, especially because it's not code that you run on every single tick. It's code that happens on singular ticks, so basically in discrete iterations, and it may happen or may not. So it's conditional as well, and you have to synchronize and predict these happenings, which I have a draft PR for and has some weird issues. So I still unfortunately need to investigate, but yeah, weapon firing is a good example.
And it's probably like the most requested thing as well.
It even gets more complex because let's say you fire your weapon, it's a grenade launcher or something. So you show the visual effect, then you create the grenade object and it starts moving. And then from the server, you get notified that, buddy guy, you can't fire that, you have 0 animals, so my bad. And then you have to kind of restore the stats, and you have to unfire the rocket. So obviously you can do that currently, you can write code for it, but this is the whole complexity that I want to basically hide or make as convenient as possible with a dedicated component.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Like if I shoot a grenade at somebody and it kills them in my screen and then my lag is so bad, I see it explode and the person's like unaffected, I think I'm getting a kill, and all of a sudden next thing I know I'm dead or something, you know, I got killed or something. Yeah. It's like the old Counter-Strike kind of thing. That would be an amazing addition, and I think a lot of people want to have that action shooter. I mean, every other person seems, every third request is something, first person shooter or something like action packed like that.
Yeah.
You're writing this stuff with your game in mind. Have you detached that path now? Like your game path is like, here, this is what you want and the features you want, and now you've grown way beyond that with Netfox, right? You've probably supporting a lot more than just what's good for your game, right? I mean, have you made a big fork yet from what's needed in your game now?
Absolutely. Yeah, because for my game, probably I would have been fine with Netfox 1.8. Just for context, we are around 1.24-ish.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so that's like 16 major features at least, and then a bunch of refactors and stuff. So absolutely. And yeah, I kind of put my own game on hold. It's kind of a weird thing because for a while I was making Netfox so that I can build my game. Then I was mostly building Netfox for other people, and now I want to build a game so that I can pull features from that and put them into Netfox for other people. So at this point, I'm kind of on and off building a game so that I can build Netfox, so that I can build it for other people.
That's amazing. You start out with something to solve your own problem, and then you end up, helping everybody else. And I think it's been greatly received. You're now a maintainer of probably the most popular lag compensation. I'm going to just go out on a limb and say that. We'll just go with that. How is that experience of managing and developing and maintaining, and maybe talk to that a little bit and some of the highs and lows to that thing, and, your time and all that.
I've been coding for close to 20 years now, so that part is not really new, but people actually caring about it is very much. So basically the whole public Netfox thing started with me posting on Reddit. I think the initial huge wave of people came through that thread, and it was absolutely overwhelming. Like, I had to consciously make a decision to close the browser tab, not check emails for a few days. It was absolutely overwhelming because there was suddenly all this dopamine on one end of people actually checking it out and trying to use it and building stuff with it. And then there's also people reporting or just making issues, a lot of them. So I had to kind of pull myself out of that, because I noticed that it's kind of difficult to sleep because, your body is in this weird state, like, hey, things are happening, so stay sharp, stay alert. It's 1 a.m. but still things are happening, so we cannot sleep now. And that was kind of counterproductive to me doing my day job, so I figured that would be a nice thing to consider. But after it settled down, it became a lot more manageable. I also had to develop a mindset on my end as well, because as much as I would love to work on Netfox and game development full time and tend to every single issue ASAP in real time, I can't really do that, unfortunately. There's many things that people use and don't necessarily realize that, it's just some guy doing it in their free time. So I think it's nice to keep in mind. The initial wave was interesting, to say the least. That's also where I decided that I really don't want for Netfox to grow kind of explosively. I'm very happy with the slow and steady approach, because it's something that I can also manage. Don't get me wrong, I would be happy if Netfox grew absolutely huge, but just in a manageable time frame, that would be nice. And this also relates to me being kind of conscious about popularizing Netfox. I try to pace my posts and stuff just so it doesn't happen all at once, so that basically I don't get overwhelmed with all the feedback and all the people. The other difficult thing is, I think that's inherent to networking, is that it's kind of mysterious. You can get these issues where something doesn't work, you have no idea why, and you have no idea how to figure out why. And I think people take the internet for granted nowadays. If you go back like 20 years, there's many households that did not have internet. I just read about this, but supposedly it was absolutely horrible to write networking code because most of the networking drivers themselves were unstable as well. So it was quite a feat to, let's say, ship a multiplayer game on Windows 95 or something. And I think that kind of unpredictability is still inherently there, because if you think about it, you are shooting tiny specks of light through the ocean and then hope it gets there, and it gets there intact in the same order, and it does so pretty fast. So it's cool that it works, but still it's if you think about it, it's a ridiculous expectation. I think unfortunately it's kind of bound to run into these weird issues, and that very much sucks, because as much as I would like to help, there are these cases where I cannot really, because I can't fly out to the person and spend the day on their PC trying to work out what's happening. So yeah, I think one lesson was that sometimes you just can't help, and you need to let it go in a way, I guess.
Imagine those guys trying to make multiplayer games 20 years ago, and the headaches and the lack of support. You can't Google anything. You couldn't Google for your answer. There's no Stack Overflow. And I guess I have to say there's no Chat GPT to try to give you, I mean, it's weird to see that. And I think we're relatively younger guys, right? And because you get some older guys who are like really know like the heart, like we know a little bit of it, right? Because we were there. And then I have people asking now about ChatGPT told me to do this, and I don't really know how to process that right now, because I don't trust it. And maybe that's dumb. Maybe I should trust it, but I understand that there's this language model and it's not actual intelligence, right? It's not actually, I don't know. Have you run into that at all?
I think you absolutely need to be on your toes a bit because it is prone to hallucinations. Because at least to my understanding, it really boils down to just a prediction machine, like putting one word and then figuring out what's the next word that's probably gonna be there. I do prefer actual human answers most of the time. Like I get it that it's more difficult to acquire because you actually need to talk to a person and they need to spend time answering. But I do prefer those, even though there are cases where asking an AI bot or something works out faster, let's say.
Yeah, maybe you have like some redundant function that isn't life-changing, but you know it can get it done for you quicker.
Yeah.
Maybe I love that, right? That makes sense. That makes you a little bit faster. But I can sense your hesitation with it there, because I think I share that too. It's like I want to be, I'm cautiously optimistic about it, and I'm also a little cynical because I think that there's some fundamentals about building relationships with people that, like you said, I have to talk to you now. That's, damn it, like now I have to make sure that you're awake and you're on the other side of the world, and then I got to be able to ask these questions. And but I just, for the record, I just want everybody who's listening to this, it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to not know stuff. Please come. We've all been there, right? I mean, how many beginners come into your Discord, or have you've seen comments on the internet, and it's like people feel bad for not knowing. And I think that that's totally, don't feel bad. Like nobody knows everything, and we're all just trying to make it, right? We're all just trying to figure it out the best that we can.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do tend to think about this a lot when people join the Discord and just ask questions or talk to people, is that, this is really not the path of least resistance. So I appreciate that a lot, because you had to go out of your way to, join the Discord. It's technically a new environment you don't necessarily know yet, so you kind of have to explore this new place and then interact with it. So I do appreciate it, even if from the other side it might feel dumb to go to places and ask questions. For me, it tends to be really valuable still, because otherwise, if people don't talk to me about Netfox, for example, I have no idea what people do with Netfox or what kind of issues they have. And if I have no idea, then I can't improve it in that regard. So it's really useful. And I'm really grateful for people taking the time to talk about it. The other thing about this whole community part is actually it was really, really nice to see that point where it's stopped being a startupology. That feeling that there's this bunch of people, and if I don't go in and talk to them, either help with their issues or just in general, then nothing is going to happen. And there was this turning point where actually I was not required. I was still kind of necessary, but not strictly required, because there were these people who popped up and would just, help others on Netfox, which was pretty damn amazing, partially because of the whole startupology thing, and also because, I made the thing. So for a long while, I was the only one who understood it and could help with it. And now there's slowly, but there's people popping up who also understand Netfox to the degree that they can help others. So it was really nice. If you guys are watching, first of all, kudos to everyone on the Discord server, and also specific kudos to Alberto, I think he was pretty much the OG Netflix guy. He was the first one to actually engage other people. It's gonna suck if later on I realize that I forgot people, but there's also Sub7 in the Discord. He's also an important part of the community and an active one. Gordo, I get to mention with the videos. He even has a Noray tutorial out, if I remember correctly. Dusty, absolutely. The author of Netfox Sharp, so basically the C# support. Also, we have a bunch of convos about add-on design in general and how to improve Netfox, so that's also pretty dope. And she also helped other people a bunch. Even the thread you mentioned, I think she was the one to suggest the simplification, so absolutely incredible. Also the Yellow Architect, just to mention, they also pushed for some important features. So yeah, I think these are the people who came to mind. If you are watching and you are not mentioned, that was absolutely probably a mistake on my part. Let us know in the comments, I guess. But yeah, I wanted to mention some people because it's really nice to see an active community, being built. And I also have to call out you specifically. I think you featuring Netfox on YouTube was like an important step. To this day, I see a bunch of people on Discord with common servers, and it's your server and mine. So I'm sure there's some overlap there.
Yeah, absolutely, and I appreciate it. And there's like 5 people that you listed there. I think you just made a post like yesterday or the day before, and you specifically called out each one of those people and their contribution. And yeah, I want to second that, because every single one of those people that you just named, I think every single one, I've had like one-on-one conversations with about some random problem or feature request, and most recently Dusty and I are working through some stuff. And so yeah, I don't even like see you anymore in there, man. It's like you're not even there. But
I know, it's amazing. I love it.